maybe just give it one more minute.
Mhm. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. For anybody that just came in, I want to remind you that we are recording, so please, if you do not want to be recorded, keep your camera off and stay muted. Any questions can be sent via the chat, and I will relay them to our presenters. I want to thank everyone for joining today, especially our presenters. We have Paula Fleming and Donald Kerr. A little bit of background on Paula. Paula is BBB's Chief Marketing and Sales Officer. She is in charge of representing and communicating BBB's values, both internally and externally, as Chief Spokesperson for BBB. Over the course of her career, she has participated in over 1,000 media interviews. Donald Kerr is AAA's Northeast Director of Student Lending and College Services. He has over 25 years of experience in the education finance industry and has been helping families pay and plan for college for the last 10 years. To start us off, I'll have Donald talk about his expertise.
Yes, so thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Not only did you hear from my introduction some of my background and expertise, but I also have a student who's graduating college this year. So I've gone through this from both sides, some of my industry experience, as well as from the parent side as well. So I've got a unique vantage point of having both points of view, so to speak. So I know that's really kind of what helps bring me as an expert here today. And hopefully everybody finds some of the tips that we're going to talk about as valuable information. So I think one of the things people want to know a lot about is when you're sending your kid off to college is kind of that college coaches that are people that are looking for out there. How do you get some edge on those admissions process? And what are the, things you should be doing? Those college coaches can sometimes be very expensive. Is it worth it for you, right? College is expensive enough as it is. Do you need to be spending a couple more thousands of dollars on a college coach? And what are some of the red flags that you want to be concerned about out there? So when you're researching college coaches, I'll start with kind of that. What are some of the red flags to look at? One of my most important red flags is what I would say is any college admissions coach who's willing to guarantee they're going to get your student into a college. It's just something they really can't do. A large part of it, the things you interact with a college coach, they're going to be dependent upon the student executing those things. So that's a red flag. Anytime you hear that, say, I promise I'm going to get your kid into this college. Be a little weary when you hear those types of things. They can certainly help you increase your chances of getting into certain colleges. Absolutely, they can do those types of things. So I think when you're looking at college admission coaches, one of the things, there's kind of a set questions I would say you want to try to research them before you determine it's worth it for you to spend that type of money. So what do you want to look at is you want to look at what their background is. Have they worked in a college admissions office in the past? Have they worked as a high school guidance counselor in the past? Have they done that? Do they have a degree in counseling? Do they have a degree in higher education? Then you can also ask them about industry memberships. Are they part of any associations like NACAC, which is the National Association for College Admissions Officers? Are they also part of the Independent Educational Consultants Association? Look to see what their credentials are really. Um, One of my favorite thing to ask those college coaches is a little bit about their success stories, right? What is their proven track record? You can certainly ask them, of the clients you work with, what percentage of the clients you work with get into their top choice college? Is it 85% are going to get into their first choice college? Is it 50%? And then even ask for testimonials from clients. If they're have a client they were very successful with, can you speak with that client and ask them questions to get comfortable about it ahead of time? And perhaps another red flag to kind of go along with that when you're asking these questions, if at any point that college admissions coach is not willing to supply this information to you, that is also definitely a red flag to be concerned with as well. Um, it's certainly a big, very important step for a tremendous amount of lots of families, right? Getting into that right college. Um, you also want to ask yourself, how much are you going to spend and how much is it worth it? A lot of that goes towards what is the student going to do. So, for example, if your student wants to go to college to become a teacher, look at that return on your investment of that $5,000 you're going to spend, or the 2,500 you're going to spend, or whatever it is they're charging you. The difference between a teacher, their starting salary from a teacher who went to a private school versus the difference on a teacher who went to, say, a state school, it could be minimal. It could be only $1,000 difference, $1,500 difference. So do you want to spend that type of money up front to get a very little rate of return on the back end? Now, maybe your student's going into a very selective field, something where that right college degree is going to translate into more earnings down the road, something like medicine. If you have some student who wants to become a doctor later on in life, well, getting into the right college, which can then in turn get you into the right internship in the right hospitals down the road, that may be worth it for you as a family to kind of spend that type of money on. So, those are some of the things you should be looking for in considering when you're looking at a college admissions coach to help you out with a very overwhelming process. Sometimes they certainly can help you um, gather everything together and keep you organized and keep you on track. So it certainly can be a good idea, but absolutely want to make sure it's worth it for you and you find the right one that's out there. Um, some other things you can kind of do, on your own. Um, with the pandemic we've had over the last couple of years, there's certainly been some changes in the admissions process. Definitely a lesser reliance on test scores that are out there. This was kind of a trend we were seeing beforehand that was happening, but it's definitely accelerated because of the pandemic and the lack of access to being able to take and schedule SATs and having them rescheduled. So you want to look at really some of the things that the admissions office look at for a student, some of the more well-rounded or the complete package. So in addition to the test scores, they're going to really look at grades. They're going to look at the rigorous classes to obtain those grades. So is the student getting all A's? But what type of classes? Are they AP? Are they honors classes? Those types of things are very important for the student in the admissions process. Extracurricular activities, and this was definitely a tough one due to the pandemic, but is a student a participant in sports, clubs, any organizations? And lack of things, you can try to come up with them on your own. One of my favorite examples was a student during the pandemic who could not do any of their extracurricular activities, but that was during a time where people were trying elderly people were trying to sign up and get their COVID vaccinations, which all had to be done online. Very difficult for older people. This student saw a unique opportunity, jumped in and filled the void, and spent her extracurricular activities helping elderly people sign up for these appointments online. Could get on the phone with them and go in online and enter their information to make sure they helped out. Those are the types of things you can do when some of the traditional activities are not available. Letters of recommendation and essays are always looked at heavily outside of the scores. They really want to see the student's personality, their characteristics, their traits, what's going to make them a good student and a good addition to that college's community. Those are the things you want to focus on. So are they determined? Are they empathetic? Are they passionate about the environment? Are they a creative thinker? Anything that's kind of unique about the student is going to help them from the admissions process. It can be a set standard they look at, but one of the best ways to look at that type of stuff is going to the college yourself. Look at that college's mission statement. Look at what that college is advertising and marketing about themselves. What are they promoting? Now you can point out in your essay and your letters of recommendation things that match that mission and those statements that the colleges are trying to accomplish. It's a great way to get an edge from that admission perspective. Kids that are open to new ideas, colleges love that type of thing as well. So they're always looking for that unique student that really stands out from the crowd. Not to say you don't want to forget completely about testing and test scores. They're definitely important. Sometimes you can look ahead of time at admissions and see if your college says it's optional. Well, then look at them and say, how did I do on my test? Did I do very good? All right, maybe you want to give that college your test scores. Maybe you didn't do good on the test. So then you say, you know what, I'm going to hold back my test scores from this college since it's not required. So definitely a lot of changes that have happened on the admissions side, and things you want to be aware of and try to keep up to date on.
Thank you, Donald. That was some great information, and I think it's ever changing in the world of COVID and college. So keeping up with those things is really important for us. Paula, I'll have you go and talk a little bit about one question we got that can start you off is, can you verify college coaches with the Better Business Bureau?
That's a great question. And I will answer that. But first and foremost, I'd like to thank Donald for his time and education surrounding this topic. I'm thrilled to team up with AAA on the spring webinar series. And as you mentioned, I've done several media interviews, but the webinar series and educating our consumers and people in general on a variety of topics is extremely important. This one being very close to home for me because I am starting the college process. And I was unaware as a AAA member until I started researching that they are sage advisors on this topic. So thank you, Donald, and some great tips for me while I begin the process. The role, yes, you can most definitely check out people offering college advice or actually colleges themselves at bbb.org for no cost. If we don't have factual information on a business or the college, we can get that and build a business profile for you. But my hope is that we will have that information. The majority of Better Business Bureau tips and information surrounding this surround, unfortunately, scams. And what we're recommending is watching out for specifically different forms of financial scams before heading off to college. And I just want to touch upon those. And there's a variety of other tips that you can find at bbb.org. But first and foremost, when you are researching scholarship and grants, you have to be extremely cautious and wary of phone calls from companies guaranteeing they can help reduce loan payments or hefty grants that are offered. So we have already, as we begin the college search for my soon-to-be senior, have already been targeted for unsolicited emails and unsolicited phone calls. And I always say, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. So no one can guarantee you a reduced loan payment when they know nothing about you. So although it sounds enticing, and they're even targeting my high schooler via email. So you have to be cautious in searching and researching companies online. Obviously, BBB.org is one resource, but there are several out there. There's a lot of information. And prior to this webinar, we actually spoke. And I know, Donald, and you might want to talk a little bit about this, but factors that are changing. For example, you had mentioned before the FAFSA banning a fee in the future. So things that you might not know just walking into this, or it could be your second child going in, and things that may change and alter. So I'm not sure if you want to talk to that point.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. That's a great point. Because every year there's tons of changes associated with applying for financial aid. And this year, there are going to be some very, very big ones. The FAFSA form, one of the main things they're going to be changing this year is they are not allowing people to charge a fee to fill out the FAFSA form anymore. It's always been a free form, so anybody could simply go online and apply for a financial aid completely on their own. But a lot of folks also have been relying on professionals, and they would work with what we call FAFSA preparers, people who help them prepare the form and fill it out. Because it does have financial information, income, assets, things such as that. So people want to make sure they're being accurate and doing it correctly. Well, they used to be able to charge fees, but that is no longer allowed with the new FAFSA season coming up as of October 1st. So where you're researching people, who can I use? What services can I use? That should also be another kind of red flag if somebody's going to be charging you a fee to fill out the FAFSA form. They could certainly still assist you with it, but they can't charge you any fees for it anymore as a professional preparer.
Great, thank you. One other thing I'd like to mention is that when I began 20 years ago at Better Business Bureau, we often saw that seniors were targeted for scams. But something has recently, unfortunately, it shifted where now our youth is being targeted. So these tech-savvy college and high school students are actually being targeted because they are so trustworthy. So there's a surprising number of scams being reported by high school and college students that have unfortunately been victims. They were unaware. So it's a great time while you're sitting down going through the college application process to talk to your child in regards to scams that might target them. And not only around college, but just in general about financial planning. I know when I went to college, the big thing was opening as many credit cards as possible. They put it under the guise of building healthy financial history, where really it was just, I was in a lot of debt when I graduated because I was not fully aware of all the problems that could arise. And if you were only paying the minimum, but you kept building up that debt. So having really healthy conversations about finances, about scams, about really making sure that you're giving your financial and personal information to trusted resources, and never falling victim to pressure tactics or unsolicited emails, phone calls, text messages. And so that's really where the Better Business Bureau would play a role. Danielle,
I have a couple questions coming in that I can field to both of you. The first one's for Donald, and it is, where do I find FAFSA help? You said it's free and we don't have to pay for it. Where do you find help for those?
Yep. So the best resource is going to be studentaid.gov. They have put in online chat and live tools and have phone numbers that you can get assistance with it. In addition to that, there are nonprofit organizations. So the Boston Public Library has some resources where you can go in person and get help filling out the FAFSA. Rhode Island has the College Planning Center, which is out of the Warwick Mall, where also you can go in one-on-one and get help filling out the FAFSA form.
Thank you. And then Paula, this one came for you. It's how can we watch out for scholarship scams?
Oh, wow, that's that's a great question. Well, there are two types of scams. There's scholarship and grant scams, and we encourage people to be wary of phone calls from companies, as I mentioned, guaranteeing that they can help. Searching the company's name online could bring up scam alerts or negative reviews from consumers. So a quick Google search with the company name often will shed light on the fact that they are scam artists. But I encourage you to read reviews and complaints about the company, and contact the school's guidance counselor or financial aid office for advice and help regarding financing your child's or your education. I think it's important that oftentimes people overlook guidance counselors, but they're a great resource. I know a lot of them, are, like many of us, are spread extremely thin, but they're still there, knowledgeable and willing to help. I think also, as I always say, a lot of the onus falls on consumers when we're talking about businesses. And in this regard, a lot of it falls on parents to really, and their child, to dig deep here and find all of the great free resources available. But it does take time, and you have to, be committed. And I would also say you have to be organized, because there's kind of a checklist that you can do for each college that your child is interested in. And as we have mentioned, times have changed from when I went to college to now, and they're going to continue to change. As Donald mentioned, the FAFSA banning the fee, but there's always things that are evolving. So it's important that you stay on top of them, and starting with your high school and then going to directly to the colleges if there's a high interest in reaching out to their resources is extremely helpful. And again, it's important if there's unsolicited phone calls, emails, or texts, that you're very cautious on who you're dealing with. Take a breath, take a step back, and do your own research. Don't just give out information.
Thank you, Paula. If someone is charging for FAFSA help, do you have a place to report them to, either with the AAA or BBB?
So that should generally be reported directly to the U.S. Department of Education at studentaid.gov. That would be the best place to report it, because that's where that form gets filled out on that website, as well as any BBB resources you may have.
And I would like to add to that, if you see any advertisements on social media platforms that appear to be a scam, I would encourage you to go directly to that social media platform and report it. So it's simply a click of a button, and there are so many different ads out there, and you are targeted as a parent trying to get and as our children targeted. So it's important that you do inform them if it is a scam, if it is a scam or believe it to be a scam.
Thank you so much. And my last one that we received in here is, what areas does both the AAA and our BBB cover?
So AAA Northeast, our territory is going to be Mass, Rhode Island, the western and southern part of Connecticut, and then parts of New York and New Jersey, as well as a foothold in New Hampshire. So around Salem, New Hampshire.
And for Better Business Bureau, we cover Eastern Mass, Maine, Rhode Island, and Vermont. But we are one of over 80 Better Business Bureaus. And when you go to bbb.org, you can find a business, a college, or a financial aid planner throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And as I mentioned, if we don't have that information, we can gather it for you in roughly 3 to 5 business days. But also, tips are universal in many cases. So whether it's the scams for college students or financial aid tips, that would be universal on our platform.
Thank you so much. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But if I don't see any come in, Thank you so much to our presenters, Paula and Donald. Your time and expertise is greatly appreciated. I know you're both personally going through it and have gone through the college process, so that's excellent insight. And a huge thank you to our audience for their fantastic questions and for being here with us today. As a reminder, BBB and AAA Northeast have another webinar coming up next month. It's called Car Care, What's Important and Why. This webinar recording will be available on Better Business Bureau's Vimeo and YouTube, found on bbb.org. I don't see any last questions, so thank you so much, everyone, for your time today, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.